Welcome back to my channel and welcome to a new series that I am hoping to do. Does it hold up? Here we will reread popular series of the past and see if their popularity was merited or if they just rode the bandwagon to fame. And I'm really excited for this. So let's level. Dystopia as a trope, as you probably know, has followed literature through many of its evolutions since its origin as an antonym to Sir Thomas More's Utopia that he wrote back in the 1920s. Although most dystopian literature was aimed at adults until The Giver, released in 1994, and very much so set a precedent of YA dystopians, opening a door. The change was slow at first. Dystopian novels aimed towards younger audiences stayed few until Suzanne Collins changed the literary world with the release of The Hunger Games in 2008. You were there, I was there. We all experienced it. We're all still experiencing it. But years before the Hunger Game craze took over, Uglies by Scott Westerfeld was released in 2005. The first of the trilogy detailing a dystopian world in which everybody is required to receive some level of cosmetic surgery in order to fit into that society's ideas of a perfect human. The success of the Uglies trilogy was so great, Scott Westerfeld went on to form a long career out of it. The Ugly trilogy completed in 2007, with Scott Westerfeld's next book, Leviathan, winning the Locus Award in 2010. Obviously, he continued to enjoy the success that the Uglies had brought him. He went on to create a comic in the Uglies world in 2012, announced a continuation of the series in 2018, and in 2020 it was announced that Uglies would be receiving its own Netflix movie. As if they hadn't sucked dry every other part of our youth already. I personally do remember loving and being completely absorbed in this series, way before I ever felt the need to read The Hunger Games. The visceral descriptions in Uglies do tell a very painful and gory, almost, tale of conformity. Despite completing before the dystopian craze even happened, and not receiving further adaptation until 5 years after it had already finished, we can definitely see that the grip it has held on with has only tightened on society. Scott Westerfeld is reviving his wave of popularity with more stories in this world. So, the important question is, does it hold up? And that's what we are here to find out. We are here to see if there was a reason why the Uglies did so good despite fighting against the current. So, join me in our adventure into the Uglies world. Let's see if they hold up, or if there was a reason that they were left behind once the Hunger Games showed up. So come on with me. You want to know the first line in this book? It's so 2000s. It says, "The early summer sky was the color of cat vomit." Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Okay. Started Uglies. I am about 45 pages into it. It's pretty good. I think Scott Westerfeld does a pretty good job of laying it down flat of what the issue is. Our main character, Tally. In this world, when people turn 16, then they get all of the cosmetic surgery done that they could possibly want, and they move out of Uglyville and into Pretty Town with the rest of the pretties. And Uglies aren't allowed in Pretty Town. So this girl, Tally, she has 3 months until she turns 16. Her best friend Paris just has already left her and kind of forgotten her. So she sneaks into Pretty Town, and then she meets Shay, another Ugly who was running around Pretty Town, and they become friends. I think that Scott Westerfeld is doing a really good job at showing that this is the future. Already, there has been so many just little gadgets thrown in here and there that have been oh, this is what the future would be like. I think all of the future technologies that he's come up with really help set the stage. And also, I really am appreciating the fact that the characters talk almost
like normal people. Because I feel like, am I gonna get in trouble for this? I feel like these days, all of the characters are just like, I'm so cool. Snark, snark, talk back, insult, and come back. Perfect. And like, they don't just talk like how real people talk. He doesn't really waste any time to set the scene or anything. Like, he makes sure that the reader understands how abnormal this is, even though in the world it is normal very clearly, which I think is good to do, especially in a YA, because that thing's not always going to be obvious to people that are young. Okay, update. So basically, Shay starts revealing all of these like hidden things. It takes Tally to the ruins of the Rusties, which is I guess like our age currently, our modern age. They talk about how like we burned trees and used oil and it's like, you know, a ruined town of from like our current age. And they talk very much so because Shay doesn't want to turn pretty. She wants to like be herself. Ugh, it's so harsh because the attitude that is built in Tally is always like, ah, no, you're fucking ugly. One eyebrow is bigger than the other, you know. And I know that Tally as a character only says that because that's what she's taught. Later on, Shay decides to run away. She doesn't want to become a pretty, so she's running away to a place called the Smoke where people that she knew ran away to instead of becoming pretty. Tally says goodbye by saying, "Oh, I wish I could have seen you when you turned pretty." Like as like some type of like sentiment. It's funny the way that Tally talks about how the world has gotten rid of all of these like negative perceptions of other people and has created equality, but then doesn't like see the logical fallacy in that like it just changed the inequality to different format. It's just funny. It's funny to watch. Okay, basically in this world they use the argument that biologically there's like only one singular way that everybody should look, like evolutionarily. And it's funny because they point this out and one of the characters saying, oh, what, you think that you can evolve by being just smart? Which is like, I think it's very tongue-in-cheek, the manipulation of like evolution as a scientific subject to serve a very eugenic purpose in a way. Big eugenics vibes going on here. Different night, but this is the exact same position, so it looks like the same night. Update. I think where last left off, Shay runs away. She escapes the city and runs away to this place called the Smoke. Tally's like, ah, man, goodbye. But unfortunately, the doctors then decide that they will not give Tally her pretty surgery, the surgery to turn her pretty, unless she helps them find Shay. This happens because she goes to the special circumstances team. They are engineered to look differently, like more menacing and like a cruel kind of pretty. They manipulate Tally into going out. They give her all of the supplies that she needs, and they also give her a necklace that like will signal and turn on a tracking device when she like holds it up to her eye because it has an eye scan. I love the idea of the hoverboard. It's like a skateboard, but it's like magnetic. But it's like how they all travel around, and it's like a skater fantasy, honestly. Like I'm just imagining like Mad Max, but like with skateboards basically while I read it. Tally goes out on a journey, finds the Smoke, finds Shay, and meets David, who was like Shay's friend and how she discovered what the Smoke was and everything. Tally starts like getting incorporated into the society and like enjoys it and like thinks like it's pretty cool, but isn't necessarily like sold on the idea of the whole like commune vibe. She liked her life in the city, so she's not necessarily like 100% into it. So David, who she's been getting progressively closer with, there's a very light love triangle. Honestly, it's so light that it's not even annoying. But David takes Tally to meet his parents, who were the people that started the smoke, actually. And then David was born outside of the cities. David's parents were doctors, and so they discovered that people that went through the Pretty operation had a lesion in their brain, literal brain damage from the operation. And people in more important roles, firefighters, doctors, people that needed a high sense of self, ended up having those lesions in their brain cured. So they basically realized that turning you pretty doesn't only change the way that you look, it changes the way that you think. Nobody is ever told that. Like, David's parents got all of their research taken away, and they had to run away from the cities because of it. Then they had David in the wild. David and Tally basically realize they have feelings for each other. David is that thing where it's just like, you're just so much cooler than Shay is. Whatever. I don't know, whatever. It's fine. It's not, like I said, it's not that bad. It's just, it's a teen thing. Teen novel thing. Because of this, Tally takes the heart necklace that was the signal to special circumstances, and she throws it in the fire and is like, still lying to everybody. Oh, the person that gave me that doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Because that was her cover story, was that, like, she had fallen in love with someone that gave her the heart necklace. And then she wakes up the next morning and so special circumstances is invading the Smokies. And, like, she literally says, there's no way that this could be my fault. When it absolutely, like, is easily readable that it's her fault. You didn't think that they had, like, a backup. I don't know. It's quite good. I'm really enjoying it. It's very entrancing. I feel like Scott Westerfeld does a really good job at, like, describing everything from point A to point B. He tells you the journey of how they got to where they are.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
It's quite enjoyable. Like, I'm blown through it, honestly. Okay, Uglies update. They found out that the surgery that turns you pretty also damages your brain. It gives you, like, literal brain damage. I just thought that was, like, and I feel like I remember thinking this when I was little too, but, like, no duh. When all you talk about is how, like, different that the people that are pretty act. Of course, like, the logical conclusion is that they also do something to you during surgery that causes that change. Maybe it will go into it further. Maybe there will be more to it, but, like, that's all that they said, was that it causes brain damage. They didn't have any further information. She realizes that she really likes David, and the next morning the special circumstances team invades. But she ends up being the only one that escapes, and she runs like a cave that David had showed her and finds David there. And she basically is just not gonna tell him that she's the reason that the special circumstances found the camp, but she does decide to go and save people. So I guess, like, I don't know, you could make the argument that telling David wouldn't help the situation right now, like, survival wise at that point, but she is still continuing to lie to him. So I don't know how well of a foundation that is for a relationship, but I get the choice. It's definitely understandable. And so they decide to go and rescue and save David's parents, who were also taken. I feel like not a lot of the characters have a lot given to them so far, even David, but Tally, our main character, we do see her evolve. So I think most of the other characters are not the best written, but at least the main character is. Okay. I have no memory where I left off here, but it takes them a really long time to, they have to, like, take the long way to not get caught and stuff like that. They do this large rescue operation that involves their hoverboards and these bungee jackets that, like, bounce you so that you don't, like, splat on the ground from jumping from a large height. And they get into the office, Unfortunately, David's dad is dead. They killed him. And also, unfortunately, they turned Shay pretty. So Shay is like, she's not necessarily like, she's just very compliant. She doesn't really want to be with the Smokies, but they're there, and she escapes with them anyways. They're able to escape, including David's mom, and they go into make a camp at the ruins, basically, to regroup and figure out what they're going to do. And they do that for a few months, and Shay complains even more and more, and she's like, I just want to be a pretty, I just want to party, I just want to go back to my new home and my new life. And has basically like lost all care that she had to be the individual that she was before the operation. David's mom says, I think I have a cure for the damage that they did to your brain. It won't affect the fact that it won't affect your physical changes. Still, Shay refuses. And so they decide to take Shay back because she obviously isn't going to change her mind. But Tally, at the same time, also volunteers to become pretty so that she can come back and they can test the cure to see if it works. David's mom refuses to experiment on unwilling people, so Tally basically like writes herself a letter and all of these things confirming that she wants the treatment to the brain damage that they give her even after she turns pretty. So they go back and the first book ends. And then in the beginning of the second book, which I've started, they are pretty, oh my god. They are trying to get into a pretty club. I don't know. I would think of it like a clique or maybe like a sorority or fraternity kind of thing. When one of the people from the smoke shows up at the party for Tally. Not gonna lie, it's been pretty good. The first book was really, really enjoyable, actually. I just feel like there were some parts that just didn't need to be as long as they were. I do think that there were some scenes I was like, okay, I get the scene. I get it. Can we move on to the next thing now? Oh my god. I think that they're gonna get rid of one love triangle and then they're gonna have a different love triangle. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Okay, I think what Scott Westerfield is doing that's really interesting with this book is you can kind of have the same purpose. Like, in the first book, the purpose is to basically understand more about themselves and why they get the pretty operation and what happens to them. And then because the pretty operation erases Shay's memories, gives her brain damage, she has to go through this whole process of like discovering these things again. And now we're seeing the pretty side of it. And I think that is very interesting. So after Croy finds Tally at the party, he says, if you feel up to it, find Valentino 317. She totally forgets about it. And then one of her new pretty friends, Zane, he begins to have a conversation with her, and it becomes kind of weird. They take some like calorie purgers because I guess they help your mind stay focused. And basically Zane was originally, before he turned pretty, going to escape to the smoke, but he chickened out. So when he became pretty, he basically like through a lot of like effort and conversation with people realized that people couldn't really remember their memories from when they were ugly, and he just got really suspicious. So when Tally shows up and there's all this attention on her from the government and stuff, he is very interested. They have a conversation and basically wakes up Tally's memory by kissing her. Like a whole like adrenaline thing pushes your brain to keep working. They go, and in an old elevator shaft they find the cure. The smoke had given her the cure. There were 2 pills. They were about to get caught, so Zane and her each swallow a singular pill. And then the next month they feel like their brain damage being undone. Like they feel like awake and coherent and non-compliant and things like that. But they get in trouble. Basically everybody has like an interface ring that allows them to interact with all the technology, but also is like a way for the government to be able to track anybody and everybody at any time that they could want. They took their interface rings off and left them away while they went and found this bag with the cure in it. And so they get in trouble and they get stuck with like a cuff that they can't take off. As like the cure is like progressing and working throughout their brains, Zane gets like these horribly intense headaches in response to cure. But what they do is they really inspire their clique to become bubbly, as they say it, to like do things that awaken your mind, get the adrenaline pumping in your system so that it makes it wakes your brain up, basically. So they teach all of their friends to start doing these things, to start thinking more clear-headedly. And in doing this, Shay remembers that Tally betrayed her and the smoke and all of these things, and gets really mad. The pressure's just closing in. Tally has like a conversation with Dr. Cable. Dr. Cable wants to make her special. And so Tally and Zane have to figure out a way to get these cuffs off of their wrists so that they can escape, so that they can get back to the smoke and have a doctor look at Zane because his headaches are getting worse. Which they do. There's like a whole thing. It's a really exciting and fun scene where they like jump out of a hot air balloon and they like burn off the cuff at 1,000,000 degrees and stuff. Tally jumps out of the hot air balloon basket too late and she misses like the jumping off point, loses her hoverboard. So she's completely stranded in the middle of nowhere, only to come upon like a community of people. Like the Smokies that escaped from cities, like they had some types of technology available to them, like the dehydrated food packets, and like they knew what a technological world was. But Tally stumbles upon this community of people that don't understand that, and they treat her as a god because she is pretty and they are ugly. And she finds out that they are basically like in an experimental dome run by the special circumstances that are being studied. The special circumstances is literally like creating in-group, out-group fighting in order to observe it, because the pretty people in their communities are compliant, so they don't have people to observe about like violence and things like that. So she finds these people and is like, that's really fucked up. Because these people think that the pretties are all gods that come and they obey them, like they're being completely and totally manipulated. And so she's like, oh, I gotta do something now about that, now that I've seen it. And so she escapes with the promise that she will come back and she will help them.
She never does.
She escapes. She finally meets up with the new smoke, and all of her friends that escaped with her, and everybody is cured and everything from the brain damage. But what she does find out is that they fucked up, because there were 2 pills. One pill is to basically deconstruct the lesions in your brain that caused the difference in behavior. And then the other pill is what stops them from deconstructing the brain matter. So Zane got the brain nano pill, meaning that his brain was just being continually eaten away progressively over the process of like a month and a half. Talks about like him losing brain function, him losing physical function and things like that. And Tally took the one that stops the brain nanos. So Zane has been left with the brain damage that he can't move with, and Tally never took the cure. She cured herself. And like I appreciate that, because I feel like Tally has always been a fairly like unremarkable character in general. Like there's nothing like that is like she's not the most adventurous or the most smart or any of these things. Like she's not like the best at anything. She's a very like average character, but it's like her determination and like development that drives her, because I do feel like I've watched her very much develop into an actual person. I feel like especially at the beginning of the first book, when she didn't really know anything about the truth, like she couldn't know about herself, she couldn't understand herself, and you watch her understand herself as she begins to understand the society that she lives in. There wasn't a second love triangle, thank God. She just fell in love with Zane. Well, We'll see. Maybe it will show up in the third book. Because there's like mentions of it, but also David said that he loved her and she couldn't say it back. Zane said that he loved her and she said it back. So, but guess what? They get fucking caught at the end. This new smoke all runs away, but the pretties get caught, including her and Zane, because the tracker is in Zane's tooth. Because Zane went to the doctor, a broken hand, and they knocked him out and put a tracker into his tooth without his knowing. And so they find the smoke again. Everybody runs away, thankfully. So Dr. Cable just finds her and Zane there alone. They do chase down a couple of other of their pretty friends, and they discover that the reason that they've been caught is because Shay has joined Special Circumstances. Dun dun dun. I knew something was like that was gonna happen, especially like after the fight. And so the third book now starts with Tally being special for a month, just like she was pretty for a month. And you have no idea like what state of mind that she's in or what she remembers. Let's see how this ends. And hopefully there's not a fourth type of surgical adjustment that she has to go through.
Serious talk. What is it with the integration of like cutting and self-harm in the series? Because I don't get it, and I feel like it's just like an opportunity to make a point wasted, because these characters are using cutting and self-harm as a way to make themselves bubbly, to like almost like bring back their old selves or wake themselves up from the dream state that turning pretty or turning special gives you. Especially like in specials in the last book, it almost like idealizes it because it is the thing that makes them cool. It is the thing that makes their brain work. It's like a misdirected commentary on cutting. Like, I don't really get what he's trying to say. And I feel like the space that is used up by the dimensions of like cutting and how to make yourself feel more alive by like taking risks or hurting yourself or things like that, it could have been like really redirected into maybe something like about like a conversation about ableism, because obviously this is a world where you don't see any disabled people. So what does that mean for disabled people? Where do disabled people go? Like, you know, do they get fixed? Do they get killed? The things that Scott Wisterfield is trying to prove by including cutting about how the physical reality of the body can make people change, like, would be so much better represented if it were given that lens of disability. Like his point that he's trying to make about how harmful, you know, trying to meet society's standards, the point would have been made so much better if he had used disability as a plot point instead of using self-harm and cutting. But the continuation of the concept, the, you know, hitting the driving of the nail, just like really hasn't followed through and has made certain scenes just feel very icky. Very, very icky. Like, why that choice? What a particular choice, you know? When thinking of the question, does it hold up? Like, at least this part. I think that there is other commentary that does, but this part is like part of the foundation of the book that makes it crumble and fall apart. I think there is such a different perspective on self-harm and addiction and things like that now than there used to be back in 2005. Putting such a subjective and judgmental, almost like idealization of this negative thing, of this thing that people didn't really know about. He took a lot of the stereotypes of cutting, and those are what's represented there. It's not the actual experiences of people who have self-harm. It's not representative of the things that those people have actually gone through. It's the stereotypes of cutting that he has put in there so that people will recognize what they're doing in some type of way.
Like, I feel like he's really trying to drive home a really irrelevant and really poorly made point that he had way many other avenues in order to make. Let's finish this up and we will see how it ends. Man, I'm like actually so disappointed. I was so excited to finish the series, and now I'm so disappointed. I'm glad I only read the first one when I was little. That was all I needed. Okay, doing more research. I knew that there was a fourth one, but I just thought it was like a short, like I just thought it was like an extra story, but like I think that Scott Westerfeld had to write another book because people were upset about the ending of specials, because I'm finding so many covers of specials that say like the final volume, the final book in the Uglies series, but it doesn't end up being the final book. Extras is. And so like I wonder if people are mad. Okay, so I just finished specials. I don't think it was... I was like really on board. The whole book, they're all talking about like, oh, if we become more independent, we'll expand out into the wild and we'll cut down all the trees like all of the old people used to. And so in the very last chapter, he has Tally like give this threatening message about how she's gonna come after you if anybody goes too far into the wild. There's like 3 pages. It was kind of cringe. And then the book ended. Oh, I wrote 3 pages about this, problem solved. I don't know. Just... But I don't know. Okay, I'm just gonna really quick overview the end of the last book. It was exactly the same as what happened in Pretties and what happened in Uglies, if you would like, except the last 100 pages of the book, which was also an issue that I had with it. But in the last 100 pages of the book, Allie has been turned special, got like carbon fiber bones and like stuff like that. And she's working now with her government to recapture or regain the power and control of some of the Smokies that had been brought back. Unfortunately, the cure for the brain lesions is still rampant. The Smokies are still out there, and Tally and Shay try to find the new smoke. Instead, they find an entire new city, some like weird name of like San Diego, and I think it's supposed to be like reference to San Diego, I'm pretty sure. And she finds like San Diego to be very radical. They are, you know, allowing people to do like surgeries that make them individualistic. They're not like regimented like Tally's, the city that Tally came from is. Tally's city, Dr. Cable bombs the city. She bombs the city because Dr. Cable is using everything that Tally and Shay have done as an excuse to attack this radical city, because they've always hated that radical city. So they bomb and they kill a bunch of people. Shay gets cured from her special lesions, which, like the lesions you get when you make Pretty, you change your mind, but in a different way. They give you like feelings of superiority and uncontrollable rage and things like that, like a lot of intense emotions that you might need like in a battle. But they still damage your brain. So Shay gets cured. Tally is like, I don't want to get cured, and realizes that the only way that she will ever stop Dr. Cable from bombing again is to go and try and destroy Dr. Cable. So Tally, who is looks like a special person trying to like rewire her brain like she did when she was Pretty, she goes and defeats Dr. Cable and her city government by secretly injecting the cure into Dr. Cable so that Dr. Cable's brain lesions go away. Everything from that point just like suddenly gets fixed, and Tally is sitting in a jail cell the entire time they're all like getting fixed and getting better. They're about to turn Tally back into like a regular person, like without all of her like advanced weapon body components, and Dr. Cable breaks her out. And then the book ends with Tally sending a threatening message to all of the cities saying, if you destroy the wild too much, I'm going to come and destroy you. And she says that in this very, very, very cringe 2-page video message that she sends to like her friends that are doing like work and helping recover cities. She sends this video to them, and then the book ends because Scott Westerfeld solved the environmental issue of human consumption with those last 3 pages that Tally gave, right? That's it. There was not like, I'm mostly frustrated because the premise, like the idea behind it is really good. And I thought the Uglies was really good. But the follow through completely fails. Like, I gotta say, I'm so glad that I only ever read the first one growing up, because I think I would have been dissatisfied as a kid too with the way that the series had ended. Scott Westerfeld manages to create a really fascinating and captivating premise that he just pumps cringy piece after cringy piece into progressively until like the very final words of the story just make you want to roll your eyes. Like, he began off the series with such urgency, like a quickly approaching deadline and a question being proposed. Uglies really introduces its characters quite well and sets like a really mysterious and dangerous tone in response to the normalness with which Tally's society is treated. This creates an atmosphere of tension, leading to quite an effective cliffhanger at the end of Uglies, as Tally is finally turned pretty because of her own actions. Unfortunately, when Pretties ended up being almost exactly the same novel, I wasn't necessarily like upset about it. I didn't have a horrible time. It just threw me a bit, left me wondering what might be in store for me with the next novel. And it was exactly the same thing, with like a memo of 100 pages tacked onto the very end of it. So much of Specials was wasted in a journey that didn't need to be described to the length that it was. It could have been shortened and edited, and then there would have been way much more to explore the repercussions of a city that was more accepting, the repercussions of, you know, the Smokies not creating a new society. It creates such like a dramatic pacing issue because Westerfeld has spent 2.5 books building up to this like, oh, these people are going to need to create a new society in order to achieve their goals, and then literally throws all of that away in the last 100 pages of the entire series in a way that resolves nearly all the problems. But the singular problem which he does not resolve, which is the environmental impact of human growth, is thrown into the last 3 pages, like almost like a bow on a present is what he wanted it to be, but to me it just feels like a band-aid on a broken leg. There was definitely enough time to address the nature issues that were posed in this book. There was so much time spent on things that didn't matter, that the things that actually mattered, the questions of how do you fix this dystopian world, were never like fully addressed. There was definitely enough time to address the nature issues. There was also enough time to expand on the premise, talking about disabled people and their experiences in this world. There was also time to write something different than what he had written in the last 2 books. These seemingly essential parts were left out for a repetitive completion and a draining of the life, urgency, and importance of the story. The ending does not inspire emotional impact in any way. It almost feels like a footnote that Scott Westerfeld has forgotten until the last pages of his book, and suddenly feels the need to fill this plot hole with a declaration from Tally that is antithetical to all of the themes that she was supposed to have learned in Specials itself. By declaring that Tally is the one who will save the wild or protect the wild from humanity, she pumps herself full of the self-importance that Scott Westerfeld spent the entire series trying to dismantle. Specials are the way that they are because of their self-importance, because of their belief of superiority. That was like the main theme of specifically the last book. Instead of demolishing her ego, her self-importance, the main character Tally inflates her feelings of self-importance by deciding that she is the vigilante figure who is to protect the world from all of the humans. And that is like literally the opposite of everything that he was trying to teach
throughout the entire series. Like, do you get my problem here? The main character literally leaves with her feelings of superiority intact. Like, as if she's the only character in the entire world who deserves to feel that superiority. Uglies. Does it hold up? If you're looking for a hit of nostalgia here, pick up the first one and be done with it. That is truly the only one of this series that actually holds up. Leave the rest of it back in 2005, please. Thanks for joining me. I'm hoping to do this as like a series. So if there are any series out there that you are wondering whether or not they hold up and you don't want to read them, let me know. Maybe I will read them for you and I'll let you know. I'm really intrigued about the evolution of literature as time goes on. That's what takes a book and turns it into a classic, if it withstands the test of time. Thank you guys for joining me for the video. I always enjoy your company. Like, comment, subscribe, definitely subscribe. Take care, and good night.